Texas has been a leader in partnerships where public authorities will partner with private developers to deliver new infrastructure projects through long-term agreements. Dating back to 2008, TxDOT has delivered nearly $10 billion in new road capacity through comprehensive development agreements. In San Antonio, they finished construction in 2020 on the new Vista Ridge water pipeline, connecting an aquifer in Burleson County to the city's water supply as a P3. There's been airport projects from Austin to Laredo, government buildings, and even the new Austin FC soccer stadium have all been delivered as public-private partnerships. The Texas Facilities Commission established the Center for Alternative Finance and Procurement in 2015 to centralize best practices for P3. There's been great success, but there's still a lot of work to be done. The good news is that funding is on the way. The $1.2 trillion infrastructure investment in jobs includes $35 billion flowing to the state of Texas. Now, P3 is not meant to replace traditional design bid builds or design build delivery. It would rather serve as an additional tool in the procurement toolbox for municipalities to consider as they advance their capital project needs. Our panel today will talk about how Texas municipalities have successfully partnered with private developers to deliver complex capital projects, and through that process, accelerate delivery, monetize excess real estate, and transfer risk to the private sector more efficiently. My name is Stephen Hill. I'm a director with KeyBank Capital Markets based here in Houston, covering the P3 market. KeyBank is actively supporting and advising private developers to structure and execute debt financing for P3 projects across the U.S., including the Travis County Courthouse and the San Marcos Public Services Complex P3 projects that were done here in Texas. I'm joined by leaders in the Texas P3 space, so excited to have some good folks on the panel. And I'll turn it over to Rodney. Do you want to start with introductions to what you'll introduce yourself?
Sure. Rodney Moss, Senior Vice President with Hunt. We have a subsidiary of Global Infrastructure Development, Amber, so I kind of switch hats quite often with business cards and email addresses, but it's one and the same. I'm an attorney, was general counsel with Balfour Beatty Construction for 12 years. I drafted the Texas P3 statute back in 2010, and then the amendments that created the Center for Alternative Finance and Procurement. John hasn't forgiven me, but yeah, so I do infrastructure. That's what I do. I'm a P3 developer. The projects Travis County and San Marcos were projects that we did.
John Conan, with the Texas Facilities Commission, Director of the P3 and Center for Alternative Finance. And Rodney, we're going to fix it this session to make it a little bit more streamlined. So the Texas Facilities Commission owns and maintains and leases up to 28 million square feet across the state for all various state agencies, over 100 of them. We've got about 20 million of owned. Most of that's in Central Texas, but we do have some in other municipalities. We have a significant 8 million square foot lease portfolio that we likely do some things that are more efficient in the P3 space, and so that's a big goal of the center. Another goal of the center is to, as Stephen alluded to, create a center of excellence with resources that cities and municipalities can tap into to an early stage of their project, to do project feasibility and connect with financial, technical, legal, and real estate advisors that can help guide and in most times shape a project to determine whether alternative delivery is the best method.
Good morning, Trey Fletcher, Deputy City Manager with the City of Pflugerville, northeast of Austin in Travis County. I've delivered a municipal building using competitive seal proposal, but we've got a bigger fish to fry with the opportunity that we're going to talk about a little bit on a 29-acre site in our downtown that we're dubbing Downtown East temporarily until it comes to its own brand, and exploring opportunities to build buildings and dispose of residual property with market uses as we go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Brown. I'm the chairman and managing director of Hyatt Brown. We're a boutique engineering and P3 advisory firm. We specialize in helping municipalities, state, local governments, and higher education institutions actually do the analysis of whether a public-private partnership delivery model makes the most sense. And then we sort of advise them all the way through the financial feasibility of their transactions. I think I'm a little too close to the speaker. Through the financial feasibility of their transactions, through the procurement process that is going to best serve their needs, and ultimately end up with a transaction that is, I'm a little too close to the speaker, that is financially feasible, but also commercially reasonable. I think our sort of consulting superpower is bridging that gap between what our mission-oriented clients, municipalities, and others want to accomplish, whether it be equity like the team talked about before us, whether it be workforce housing or other things, but then blending that into a transaction that is going to make sense for the market, that's going to be financeable, and that's going to be executable in a delivery model that is, I think, a pretty innovative approach to addressing problems that are difficult to address when you typically use a design bid field and even a design build structure. We were the advisor to Travis County, as Deanna mentioned, on the courthouse project. You're going to hear about that. We also helped Travis County monetize a downtown parcel that the courthouse is going to go on, and the revenue from that is helping to support the project, and we're delighted to have recently been engaged by the city of Pflugerville to help them with their project. So look forward to this discussion and answering questions later.
Thank you. So, as Jay mentioned, that there are plenty of cities and counties that are land rich, they have facilities. And one aspect of P3 where we think there could be value in partnering with private developers is to really unlock that value of real estate. And maybe I'll start with you, John. TFC has a significant real estate portfolio, over 28 million square feet of facilities. Interested in your thoughts on how P3 and kind of private developers could play a part in unlocking additional value for cities and counties.
Sure, thanks, Stephen. So as I mentioned, we've got over 28 million square feet owned and leased, and to start with the lease portfolio, that's really stretches out across the state. And with what's happened in the real estate market in Texas, really in the country, but in Texas and certainly certain areas even more so, land prices have gone through the roof, and that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on lease rates. And that translates to more cost for our agencies. So we own land around the state, and we really need to look for opportunities to optimize that by doing P3 and rolling out of these expensive leases. The other thing with leasing is that we, while we per se don't pay property taxes are paid on those buildings. And to the extent that we can own the dirt, do a ground lease with a performance contract and structure it as alternative delivery to P3, and it's for public use, then we can have a cost avoidance there that's really significant, because that's a big component of lease rates. With property values going up, assessed values are going up. So tremendous amount of savings there. And then just in our portfolio in general, because of what's happened with COVID over the last 2 years, both from an administrative perspective, but also our client service agencies that deliver client service to citizens of Texas, they have had to develop different ways to deliver those services remotely and so forth. And so there's a lot of work that's being done by architects for kind of redesigning and reimagining how buildings can be redesigned to better support the operation. And I think the state is just scratching the surface on that right now, and how they would want to kind of modify their facility infrastructure to support the operation. So there's some savings there as well. And then with our own portfolio, certainly we do a fantastic job of building world-class buildings. If you've been through Austin, you see the cranes and the Kappa Complex project, with virtually $1 billion worth of construction that has, even through COVID, has been on time and on budget. But we're going to put a couple million square feet and state employees right down there in the shadow of the Capitol, and really transforming by Congress Avenue, which runs from runs on the north side of the Capitol, runs up to MLK. Their city abandoned that as part of that. They're turning that into green space, so it's really transformational. Our struggle always is not in delivering great facilities and not having a team to maintain them. It's getting the resources to do the programmatic maintenance that keeps the assets in great stead. And we struggle with that because those dollars are always competing for services. So we are typically behind, and our trend line on accumulated deferred maintenance is higher than the private sector. So if we can restructure some of our things to be P3 delivery and put that burden on the private sector, I think there's a tremendous amount of efficiencies there, and we won't end up in situations where with a hobby building in downtown Austin, we turn that over to the GLO and just sell it off because it's been run down.
That's great. And I do think that there are plenty of opportunities that municipalities can readily identify to be more efficient with their real estate portfolio, but it's taking that next step of actually engaging someone that can help you kind of structure and execute something to really unlock that value. So just wanted to turn it over to you, Jay. I know you've got good experience for Travis County, but interested in your thoughts about how you advise your clients to execute.
Thank you for that question. I'm gonna see if I can maneuver this thing to keep it quiet. Most of the time, my clients, by the time we get hired, they have a concept for a capital project that they need, but they don't quite know exactly how to go about executing it. They are more than likely in a deferred maintenance situation, like John said, where they've been doing a good job putting bubblegum and shoestring on a capital project to keep it going, but now it's beyond the point of continuing to throw good money after bad. We need to do something more. But in addition, they also have other community needs that they're trying to accomplish as well. So what we try to do is help them look at their real estate more comprehensively, look at the value of their real estate and figure out how you can combine excess real estate, underutilized assets with your own capital needs and create a transaction that is going to bring actually more value than you would have if you just tried to do your capital project on its own. So that's why it's really important to early on understand what you're playing for, because it really starts to me with land value and development potential and doing the math, and then overlaying all the other needs that you have on top of that so you can see how feasible your project really is and how you can execute, and then putting a procurement structure together to deliver on that. All the stuff we heard about earlier in terms of these requirements for sustainability and equity are fabulous things to do, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a transaction, and there needs to be a transaction that is going to work in the marketplace. It's going to work for the community. It's going to work for the government agency that's trying to do it, and that's where you need an advisor to really understand that and work with you to scope a project and then put it in the marketplace in a way that's going to attract the right development community and get financed and get delivered. And so that to me is the starting point.
It's a good segue into the work you did on the Travis County Civil and Family Courthouse project to really kickstart that process. I know Rodney is managing construction now. I think we're getting close to on time, on budget delivery for that project. But I want to turn it over to you, Rodney, and hear more about how Travis County structured the Civil and Family Courthouse and just partnering with your team.
Sure. So Travis County, their courthouse is 75 years old by the time this project will be done. It had 4 courtrooms in its original design and somehow was able to convert open space in the courtroom and other things. They were functioning at 18 or 19 courthouse rooms, and they needed 26. So you can think about what a 70-year-old courthouse building and how dysfunctional that could be in modern justice. So they had a bond referendum to build a new courthouse that failed by 1,000 votes. And, you know, that was a real kick in the pants for lots of reasons. And it wasn't, I think, because the voters didn't necessarily support the courthouse. There was some press and some other things about it, where it needed to be and where it shouldn't be. And so anyway, it lost. And so when you think about what happens then is you can't go out and issue debt for 2 years after it fails a bond referendum. So the problem just exacerbates. So they had a window between November and the close of the legislative session, the following, because it's a biennium, 2 years later, because there was a bill around certificates of obligation and wanting to avoid referendums to lose again, potentially risking that, they had to get this courthouse bought and underway. And so they designed their whole procurement process around that window and making sure that they didn't risk missing the window. So I don't know if you guys know this, but government is not built for speed. So if you think about what a traditional delivery would have been, after we got the deal done, Travis County, we all sat around and looked at it, so what would this have taken if you'd done it yourself? They saved approximately 2 years in the delivery timeline. So you know what's happened in the 2 years since late or mid-19? A lot of inflation, right? If you just look at the cost of inflation alone, that project costs 20% more than they bought it for. If you look at what interest rates are doing, 100 basis points in the cost of capital is happening. So what does that mean? Speed, time is money in infrastructure, and you've got to focus on that because the cost of waiting is expensive. So Bob Hebert, the county judge for Bend County, a wise man, once said, traditional delivery of infrastructure is like an axe. It works, it's efficient, it's safe, it's what we do every day, we know how to use it, it doesn't take a lot of know-how to use it, but it gets the job done. P3 is like a chainsaw. It's fast, it's efficient, but if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to operate it, you will hurt yourself. And that's why, we had the foresight to establish the Center for Alternative Procurement Finance and to have advisors like Jay Brown to keep those guardrails up so that you get the outcomes you need. P3 is just a delivery method. It's a tool in the toolkit. But if you think about development in any infrastructure project, you got 3 buckets of risk that sit on somebody's balance sheet. You have development risk around land acquisition, permitting, utilities, entitlements, all those things. You've got completion risk, which is basically the design and construction, and then you've got life cycle risk. What you're trying to do, because risk drives the cost of money, it drives the cost of projects, what you've got to do is de-risk the deal. And if you see a project that's big, complex, and has a lot of risk, chances are P3 is going to make it faster, better, cheaper. And so, how you parse that risk equation out, we're going to talk a lot about a build-to-suit delivery method today, which is basically design, build, small f, which means construction finance. But what that does is it allows the parties to work together to de-risk at least those first 2 pieces of risk, which is development and completion, so that you're not driving a risk into the cost of the facility that can be eliminated. I can talk a lot about Travis County in terms of this progressive P3 that Deanna mentioned a minute ago. but it's completely designed to de-risk the deal and get it done as quickly as possible. So in Travis County, we went from signing the pre-development in July to breaking ground 9 months later in April. We had no design, no land. We had to condemn a piece of property. We had to close an alley. We had to get a variance on height restriction. We had to do all these things. And you think about how you do all of that and design the building and finance it in 9 months. That's what P3 does.
Good. And there, for folks that can see the slide, there is a rendering of the Travis County Courthouse. It's now kind of fully developed in construction, near completion. It's on the bottom left-hand side. Wanted to turn it over to Trey. Bottom right-hand side. Yeah. Wanted to turn it over to Trey. So Rodney's kind of nearing completion on the Travis County Courthouse. You're starting the process here shortly. So wanted to kind of get your thoughts and hear more about your upcoming project.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the group in our infancy stage of this process and our journey. Our city hall was built in the 80s and was not purpose-built for this purpose. It was a collection of medical and other professional offices, and it's just sorely not meeting our needs. And so we've had a couple of unsuccessful bond election opportunities for a new facility over the years, and so we're trying to muster together an opportunity for the Curry to deliver a project for the community that we just don't have. It's a gathering place, a living room, some place to enjoy the community and things of that nature. And so after looking around at a couple smaller parcels to do something more traditional, we, at the suggestion of the council member, looked at a much larger parcel. This 29-acre parcel had never been developed with anything, still harvested for hay and whatnot. And so, but it's right in the middle of the community. And so this cavity, if you will, the vacant lot, it's in the heart of the community. So just like your chest has a cavity in it, we need to put a heart in it. And so that's what this development is aiming to do. The voters approved $47 million for a multi-generational recreation center over in 2020. And so we hope to site that adjacent to the city hall. Create a reason to go and know actually where your city hall is and how to engage with it. Develop it with some uses that aren't necessarily what you would expect to find in a city hall. Community workspace, things that we're learning through COVID. People aren't going to the office anymore. So how can we use that opportunity, not only for our staff, but our community to come to that facility? And then the balance of that land would be developed with trails, open space, market uses in restaurant, residential, office, things that complement the development and fill a void in the community that we're so sorely looking for and other communities in our region have successfully achieved. And so we've looked at Travis County, talked to their staff, talked to brokers in the region, and really feel like this bears some evaluation opportunity. And all the reasons that Jay outlined is exactly why we're going down this path, and Hyatt Brown, frankly, is helping us out to do that. So over the next 6 months, we're going to be doing our facility needs assessment, which is already underway, and engaging our community stakeholders to build this plan and build some buy-in and build the foundation and get anything going.
Good. Wanted to turn it over to Jay. Jay's been the common denominator between Travis County and Pflugerville. So interested in your thoughts on some of the challenges that have arisen in Travis County and are upcoming on Pflugerville.
Thank you. One of the challenging, but as somebody said earlier, it's not challenging, it's problem solving. One of the problems we have to solve on a project like this is that the mix of, first of all, the whole site has to work together, right? The city is trying to build a place that's going to serve its needs, but that's also going to invite all sorts of other activities, but also be commercially reasonable. So one of the challenges is how do you pick the right development team and the right partners to both build civic uses and at the same and at the same time build mixed-use development and take on all that market risk. So we need to balance the risk profiles of development industry folks that want to take on commercial development risk on the mixed-use commercial side, and those that really are more interested in delivering the civic projects, and figure out how they all work together on a site and on a master plan, if you will, that's gonna all work together. That's not a challenge that we're afraid of. We actually look forward to that challenge. When Trey and I talked about whether to come here, we're at the early stages of this, and somebody mentioned earlier the importance of communication. We debated on how much we could say about the project, because we haven't done all the community engagement and all of that stuff. But the city has been very transparent in what it's trying to do. And we thought, we gotta start getting the word out about the project to industry sooner rather than later. So really, this is about sharing some of the concepts that we're gonna try to solve for, with the hope that folks like you guys and industry folks start paying attention to this project, because when it comes out, it's gonna be one that you're gonna wanna have involvement in, because it's gonna be a fabulous project. So that's what we're here to sort of paint the picture. This progressive P3 model that Rodney talked about and that we did on Travis County is really the only way to deliver a project with this kind of complexity in a collaborative manner. You cannot put an RFP together to build a 29-acre new downtown for the city of Pflugerville and expect that the market can understand how to process that, how to deliver that. We can't even design that. So what you do is you come up with a procurement process that allows you to select a development team that has all the skills and the know-how to work with you progressively through that process. That's what all the de-risking is about. That's what we were able to do, and that's why we were able to deliver such a fabulous project with Travis County. That's the same thing we hope to do with Trey and with Pflugerville. And I gotta imagine that other municipalities in Texas that are trying to figure out how to deliver creative projects need the same kind of flexibility. So this model is really, I think, the only way to deliver a complex project quickly and efficiently.
The interesting aspect is having kind of a multifaceted facility with the new city hall and new recreation center, kind of mixed use and downtown core. One of the things that strikes me as a similarity is the San Marcos Public Services Complex, which Rodney's team built recently, where there was the need to kind of consolidate facilities into a single project and come to market with a single transaction where developers could propose solutions. So, Rodney, interested in your thoughts and hearing more about the San Marcos Public Services Complex.
Yeah, one thing about San Marcos and sort of proof of concept around the delivery method, you know, a big and complex is not the same to Travis County as it is to San Marcos, right? They're completely different measures. But the same rules apply. So in San Marcos, they had a fleet maintenance facility right in sort of the heart of the city, downtown, which was an eyesore. It was not the highest and best use of the land. They needed to redevelop that land, but they couldn't do it until they got a new fleet facility. And then they had these departments that were somewhat fragmented that needed to all be consolidated into a single site. And they had 29 acres outside of town, or 26 acres outside of town that had been, you know, held for that purpose. But it was really around the financing and the debt capacity. And so they came to the market and they said, you know, we don't have the debt today. We have funds within our utility rates and other places where we'll be able to issue the debt, but we want a developer to build us a state-of-the-art maintenance facility as quickly as possible. And here's what we can afford. We have $44 million of debt capacity. I need the best facility that $44 million will buy. And so it was, you know, again, around, as we were talking about this progressive and the delivery method, when you're going through that process of figuring out the program and the scope, you have to have really good current information from the design and construction team as you're moving your way through that process to optimize that scope and the schedule. So this project was awarded in December of 2020. You may know what happened in December of 2020. COVID sort of happened. We didn't know about it in February, but 2019. This project closed in December of was awarded in December of 19. We started in spring of 20. So we also this project in the lower left corner, that's about half the project, but it's a lot of steel in the project. You may know what happened to the cost of steel in 20, right? So we were racing a lot of things, and we saw the supply chain problem happening. We saw the escalation happening, and we were pushing the city. We've got to go. If you want $44 million of the most scope you can get, you've got to go now, and we've got to get this thing designed and done. And we were able to avoid all of that supply chain problem, and they saved about $3.5 million on a $44 million building because they were able to avoid all of that stuff. And so the other thing about this is they hadn't spent a lot of time on program and design. They knew kind of generally what they want, but we had a very detailed programmatic study. So we were awarded the project before they even knew what they wanted to build. And the first item of business was to go around and look at all the state-of-the-art facilities and understand what they liked and didn't like, and very quickly get to a program and a design so that we could start design. So we were awarded in December. The city council approved the cost and the schedule and the GMP in May, and we went to financial close in June and finished the project 14 months later. Turned it over last October. You can see, there are lots of things around sustainability. You see the water capture, the big tanks in the front on the left-hand side, the solar on the roof. It's a very resilient, sustainable facility that the city is very proud of. And we were able to do all of that and incorporate all of that, which adds cost into that original first cost budget because of this progressive delivery process.
I do want to save some time for audience Q&A, but before we get there, I did want to pick on John and Trina one last time and kind of get their thoughts on as municipalities, counties, public agencies start to evaluate their capital plans and consider P3. Interested in your thoughts on kind of lessons learned and what are some of the key factors they should be considering as they evaluate whether P3 may be suitable for their capital plans.
Yeah, so as Rodney was speaking about this and the complexity of it, it brings me to a project that we're evaluating right now, and stakeholders have not determined a delivery method, but it's there was an appropriation for $40 million out of the ARPA money to the Facilities Commission to build a 100-bed behavioral health center in the Permian Basin. Now the center is estimated to actually cost closer to $100 million. So it will be supplemented by private donations. So that adds a layer of complexity. We typically don't work that way, combining private funds and public funds, and then having the complexity of and needing to meet the federal requirements and understanding what all those are. The governor's office has set up a specific process for actually, even though it's been appropriated to you, to an agency, they have to apply for a grant to justify that it's compliant with the federal regulations. So, and then, in looking at the site where this is going to be, they also want to incorporate it as part of, as the first phase of a greater academic medical facility that's envisioned for the area. That's years in the making and probably over $1 billion. But we're first out of the gate on that, so we need to kind of play well with them and work and incorporate within that overall design. And then, there's a lot of, when you think of the Panhandle, there's oil companies. So we are working with an oil company that's got a site that's our preference, but they've got a lot of complexity on the site. They've got vertical wells that are working. They've got horizontal wells, pad sites that they need to relocate and so forth. And then something I'd never heard before, and I've been in real estate a long time. I bet you didn't know that the Midland Airport is designated as the only spaceport in the country. So there are very unique setback requirements, and we are very close to that as well. So, yeah. So, as Rodney stated, in order to meet an aggressive timeline and solve all of those challenges or problems, alternative delivery can really help you do that and identify, de-risk the project. There's a lot of risks that I just, kind of went through pretty quickly, and that doesn't even scratch the surface. But so I think alternative, it's kind of custom made for an alternative delivery.
That's great. I'll turn it over to Trey to have the last word. As far as layers of funds and so forth, a couple examples. One with Downtown East, we've previously decommitted some leases. We consolidated some offices into an asset that we acquired and did some remodeling in. And then when we move into that new building, we'll be able to monetize that asset as well as the existing city hall for a lease or a purchase opportunity and help re-energize the downtown area that part that we're vacating and moving to the east. Another opportunity is we have the bond funds for the one project. So we really have 3 P3 projects to evaluate. There's the delivery of the overall site, and then the project delivery method of each of the 2 vertical construction buildings, as well as the infrastructure to support them. And so between the leases and land sales on the existing 29 acres, and then finding ways to, with the TERS that we're creating this year, also to energize and utilize your successes to repay your debt. Another example, and just as Deanna foreshadowed this presentation, I'll foreshadow the Texas Water Development Board presentation later. We have water treatment plant expansion that we're undertaking for a surface water treatment facility, doubling its capacity. And reducing our cost of capital is about the best way we can do to save money on that project. And so we're able to secure $24 million at lower interest rates than the market otherwise would give us through that program, as well as through being the first city in Texas to use the WIFIA program through the USEPA. So it's looking for innovative solutions to, while they have their own requirements, they can translate into lower costs to the project through lower cost of capital.
That's great. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the panelists committing time to be here today. I wanted to open it up and see if there are any questions from the audience.
Sanders with NPC Solutions. Does any of the panel members have an opinion on a possibility of using a P3 structure to support charging station build-outs for a variety of government police transactions?
Not a lot, but I will tell you, I was on a call last week with a group of consultants from a big consulting firm that are trying to solve for that very problem. How can we use the P3 delivery model for charging stations for fleet that's being operated by municipalities? So I will tell you, I was on a call with a parking consultant, a big 4 consulting firm, and myself, and we were all brainstorming exactly how to structure that. I'd love to talk to you about where you guys' thinking are, but that is something that everyone's looking at right now, particularly along the right of ways of departments of transportation as well. So yeah, it's being discussed.
Well, when you look at the state of Texas, one thing we have a lot of in Central Texas, especially in Austin, parking garages. We've got a massive amount of parking garages, which would be really a natural fit to do those kind of charging stations. We've got some challenges. Those are funded on with tax-free municipal bonds, and so there are limits and caps on how much revenue you can generate from that. So there's, it's not as straightforward as that. Things we need to fix, but definitely a very good spread for a charging infrastructure. We're
closing on a parking garage in Annapolis, Maryland in a few weeks, and you know, part of the innovation and part of the progressive delivery process is how many charging stations do we have, and then how we put solar on the top of the building to monetize that and create a revenue stream so that it's just not a capital cost. And I absolutely think that EV charging is a perfect space for a partnership because it's not what government has been doing, and you know, it takes government right away and assets to actually deliver it. So it just seems to me it has to be a P3.
Any other questions?
Can you elaborate on the changes you're thinking of for the P3 statute to make it more user-friendly?
Since you wrote it, Rodney, why don't you take that one? I'm thinking to start over. So after I learned all the lessons in Texas, I worked on the Florida statute, and the Florida statute's like 4 paragraphs, and the Texas statute's like 20 pages, so that gives you an idea. It's too cumbersome, it's too complex, and just so everybody understands, the state of Texas had just gone through the Trans-Texas corridor and the sort of fear of P3 and the political backlash that happened, particularly at a state level. And so I was following a lot of fear-based politics around, you know, these things should only be able to happen if they go through 40 levels of approval. And the statute is really designed for state and local government, but we didn't want to sort of cut out the state. And so what we might do is separate it into 2 statutes and make it much more streamlined for local government to do what it needs to do. Local government has many more powers and much more flexibility around financing than state does. So that's where I think we're headed.
It meet a lot more frequently as well, but since we only meet it once every biennium. But yeah, let's not forget about the state. We need to streamline us as well.
Any more questions? Thank you for joining us.